Hey, do you want to do over 300,000 damage with one hit? Do you want to make your account stronger without spending a bunch of money? I want to talk about how to build up your characters, how to do a bunch of damage, and 10 times those DPS numbers as soon as humanly possible. Let's get into it. Are you looking for a wicked turn-based RPG with a ton of heroes to collect, a free-to-play game available on PC and mobile? Then you need to check out Raid Shadow Legends, the sponsor of this video. The High Elves is my favorite faction in Raid, and Arbiter is the first Void Legendary unit that I got. Luckily, she's free, which is pretty darn cool. And I also got this guy Ethos, who one-bangs everyone in the arena. The High Elves faction has a ton of units that can carry your account, but there are rumors of an even stronger hero coming to Raid. Ultimate Death Knight is rumored to be coming in August, so you want to jump into the game right now so you don't miss any of the hype. New players can also get this welcome pack worth $30. Just make sure to claim it from your inbox. You can get a free epic unit. It's a no-brainer. They've added a bunch of new champs, they've overhauled the vault, and during the summer splash, you can even get yourself a cool Trunda skin. Scan the QR code or click the link down below to start playing Raid today for free and get a bunch of wicked rewards just for being a new player. Thank you so much for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into the content. So just a disclaimer, your damage doesn't suck because you suck. Your damage sucks because you haven't spent enough resin. You haven't spent enough time in the game. And anyone can get to a crazy level of damage if they do spend time. Your growth is limited by resin and by getting artifacts, talent upgrades, experience. There's nothing you can do to speed things up. And so it is a bit of a waiting game to get there. On top of this, you get tons of value from the characters you get. And as you wish in the game, they will get stronger. And a unit that you have now can gain tons of value through constellations. A great example of this is Shang Ling getting 40% more duration on her burst ability. You can't compete with this as an early game player. There's nothing you can do other than wait, earn your Primo Gems, do your events, and then get these character constellations over time. This account is free to play, but I played for 2 years. And so some of the damage numbers and the things you're gonna see, this is not a normal thing to have. An R3 5-star weapon, best in slot weapon. This is abnormal. But what you can do is you can do the guaranteed things to boost your damage, make your account stronger, and that's my quick disclaimer. Follow this list here, and you're gonna have a better account. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing you're gonna do is level your characters. And unfortunately, many people fall into this trap. Level 50, level 50, level 50, 50, 50, 50, 50, 50, 50. And you level up all of your characters and you run out of resources. Resin and energy is finite. The amount of experience books, the amount of boss materials, this is a difficult thing to amass a lot of because of the constraints on your energy. And so what you should be doing is choosing a few characters that you really enjoy and level them up as far as you can and max them out because they're going to carry your team and they're going to be on the field doing damage the majority of the time. That means that you can take their weapons up and you can take their talents up and you can make them the carry of the team. If you don't do this, you're going to have a bunch of characters doing average damage instead of supporting these units and making them hit like an absolute truck, okay? Because for all the resources it would take to get these units to 50, you could probably take a crazy unit to 70 or even 80. Or maybe you could take them all the way to 90. And this has a lot of weight as well. Because when ascending a character, you get base attack, base defense, but typically you also get an ascension stat. In the case of Ayato, he gets crit damage for free built into his kit, which is a huge boost to your overall damage. So Ascensions, giving you those base stats, goes a long way to bringing up your damage. But on top of this, you're able to unlock some of their passive abilities, usually a very strong one being at level 70. These passives typically can be game-changing for your units, and in some cases, unlock the true potential of a character. And so getting some of these units up to 70 as soon as you can and fully unlocking their kit is kind of a big way to boost your damage overall. But that also allows you to unlock talents. And this is where I highly recommend you invest your resources and get the guaranteed upgrades. When you ascend your character, it will unlock the the ability to level up these talents and get a guaranteed boost to your damage modifiers. That is something that's going to scale off of your weapon, your base stats, your artifacts. And you could farm for days trying to get a good artifact with crit damage and crit rate. But you can get a guaranteed upgrade that will boost up your damage by doing this. And so I highly recommend you focus on the things that you can control. Ascensions, talents, and then everything else will fall in line and you'll get damage long term. But don't skip these. However, that being said, it's not perfect on everyone, but there is a talent reference on what you should prioritize. Ayato does not do normal attacks, just normal attacks like this. His damage, you get nothing from that. Typically, he uses his E ability and uses these slashes. And so leveling this up first, you would typically use this ability and you would swap off. And for Xiangling, as a support, she does not do her normal attacks. She uses her E ability, she presses Q, and then gets the hell off the field. And so when you're looking at your characters and you're looking at what talents you should be upgrading, in many cases, on many of your supports, you wouldn't even want to use your normal attack. Focus your books into the skills you're going to be using. Focus on getting those guaranteed upgrades on the most impactful things. That isn't the case for everyone. There are some units that will do normal attacks or charge attacks. Someone like Gon, you hear she's charge attack focused, so it's not an end-all, be-all kind of advice for everyone, but a lot of different supports in the game you're gonna see here. He's a main DPS, he's kind of an anomaly, but only these two skills. Only these two skills. Right? There's niche situations where you might do all of them, but a lot of supports in the game, they have all of these, right? All of these, none of the normal attack. So save yourself some books. But one of the biggest things you can do for your character, alongside the talents, alongside Ascension, is don't sleep on weapons. And there are some 4-star weapons that can compete with 5-star weapons. A great example of this is the Catch. This is a weapon that you can get for free. You have to do a ton of fishing. It's pretty boring. But a weapon like this is a game-changing end-game weapon. And you should max it out, take it to level 90. Because this base damage, the stats you get on the Ascension, the passives, this is huge in your kit. In the case of my Ganyu, this boosts my normal attack damage. This thing here, giving me 44% crit rate. Weapons matter a lot. And so you need to make sure that you're leveling those up. They're as important as characters, if not more important in some cases. There's weapons like the Stringless that can give you insane damage boosts. Weapons like the Sacrificial Bow, which might not be as focused on damage, but can give you your abilities back. And there's even support weapons that can boost up your attack for teammates by 48%. Another thing to consider is, back in the day, Favonius weapons weren't that popular, but the further we've gone in Genshin Impact, there's a lot of people that advocate for these weapons. These give all of your teammates energy, and it allows you to get those burst abilities out easier without needing a bunch of stats. If you have multiple supports using these Favonius weapons, you can typically just spam your abilities, which leads to more reactions and more DPS. So if you have a couple of these hanging around, they can be very good options just to throw on anyone and get some pretty good results, especially if you have refinements. You have a ton of different options, but at the end of the day, if you level your weapons, you're going to get value, you're going to get damage, and you're going to win the game. Trust me. But the next piece of the pie, and one of the things that typically you're going to need to wait on, is artifacts. This is where you take your account from good to godly, but it's going to take a lot of time. Typically, people don't farm artifacts until they're a much higher adventure rank, around adventure rank 45, because then you can get guaranteed gold artifacts in the game, which is what you're gonna wanna be using. Purple artifacts just aren't as good, typically the sets aren't as good, and this is where the end game really starts and the grind against the RNG gods takes hold. But things like this, increasing my charged attack damage by 35%. This is insanely, insanely good. The substats on it, attack percentage, crit damage, crit rate. This is where you start going sicko mode with your DPS. Now, not every artifact is the same. Something like the Emblem set, this is a notoriously universal, very good artifact set that can work on a ton of different units, and farming a bunch of it is going to benefit your account. But typically there are focus sets that do a specific thing, and you farm these for your main DPS. This is a physical set. This one here is more of a hydro and an attack set, a normal attack and charge attack set. And so what you're going to want to do is definitely farm yourself some emblem pieces because they're good on a wide variety of characters. But typically, you want to choose your main DPS and farm a set that works for them. In the case of someone like D-Luke, he uses this set, the Crimson set, and I would commit to doing 1 or 2 characters. Maybe farm a really good emblem set or 2 good emblem sets, and then choose your main DPS. Whatever order you do it, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, your support units might even out DPS some of your main units. This unit is considered a support unit, and I have the emblem set on her. She has my highest damage hit in the game. So if you build them, they're gonna hit hard. And if you're bringing up your account's damage with good artifacts, it'll make it easier to farm the other domains. It doesn't matter too much. As long as you're leveling, getting your talents, and getting some sort of artifacts, you're going to progress through the game. All right, so with artifacts, another thing you need to consider is the amount of stat rolls that are on it. If you look at this piece, it has 3 stat rolls. This one has 4. Now, every 4 levels, 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20, you're actually going to get an upgrade on these substats. However, if it has 3 stats, you need to roll one on at level 4. So this piece here, this has crit damage and crit rate. This one has crit damage and crit rate. This piece, hypothetically, could never reach the potential of this piece because I've already got the maximum amount of stats on it. You can get really unlucky and I could land this flat defense every single time, but it is something you need to consider is the base rolls that are on it. Now, the stats can also have a variance in value, both when they land on it initially and if you roll for it. You can see here the crit damage is 7.8%, but on this piece, it's only 5.4. So if you get extremely lucky, you can end with 5 or even 10% more crit damage than if you were to low roll every single time. That is something you need to consider when looking at the quality of your artifacts. Now, crit rate and crit damage is very important in this game for building up your damage, and it is known as your crit value. Now, there's a ratio of 1 to 2. Crit rate at 2.7 is 1 roll of crit rate. But with crit damage at 5.4, this is 1 roll of crit damage. It is a 2 times multiplier. Crit rate can be 3.9%, and crit damage can go all the way up to 7.8%. You want to look at the overall crit value on an item, and if it's 30, 35, into 40, that is a very, very good item typically. If you go beyond 40%, we're looking at God roll unbelievably good item. A piece like this has a crit value of about 40%. This is 10 times 2, and this is a flat 20%, giving me 40 crit damage on one item. This is a God tier piece that I will almost never replace. But even if you get any rolls of crit, there's other stats that are very valuable in this game. Elemental Mastery makes things like Vaporize and Melt reactions do more damage. And Energy Recharge means that you can get your Elemental Burst back sooner. A unit like Xiangling here is extremely valuable because of her burst ability. If she doesn't have any energy recharge and she takes forever to get this burst back, she loses a ton of value as a character. So you want to look for things that might give energy recharge to your units so they can get those bursts back quicker. This is one of the best stats in the game alongside crit rate and crit damage for boosting your stats and boosting your overall DPS. One more very important thing for artifacts is elemental cups, goblets. These are one of the biggest damage boosts in the game. Even if it's an offset piece that you're not using, you want to hold on to these, especially if they have good rolls for damage, because it's very hard to get these, and typically you use these as the offset piece. So if you look at my guy here, he's got the Heart of Depth set in all of his slots, and then the Goblet is a different one. This is something you should definitely consider to boost your damage. Now, here is something that might be controversial, but the Artifact Strongbox can be an amazing tool. Now, currently, it is a little bit more niche, and there's certain sets that you can put in here. And some people hate this, but there is a rumor that in 3.0, they're adding all the other sets. So one thing you could consider is you take all of your trash artifacts and you put them in the set that you want. So an example of this, if I was to farm a ton of this emblem stuff and I look at some of these that don't have the best rolls and I'm not really going to level them up, you could trade them in 3 for 1 for an artifact that you like. And so this can be very valuable in cases like our boy D-Luke, because unfortunately, some of these domains, they have really bad side pieces. You might want one of them, but you don't want the other. If you can focus farm these using the Strongbox, it can speed up how quickly you can get a set going. So if I was going to make an argument for artifact farming, I would say go into the emblem domain and farm this set, because both of the sets are pretty darn good overall. You can use these for filler pieces, but the emblem set is amazing. And then you take all of the trash artifacts that you get from this, and you focus farm it into a set that you want for your main DPS. This Noblesse is also a really good support piece. You can use the Strongbox for this one too, and make your supports hit like a truck, but that's what I would do. But you're gonna have to wait for 3.0 to really do that. Right now, you don't have as much access to the Strongbox, but it is something that can progress your account, because my argument is, I've never had issues with experience. I have tons of trash artifacts here for experience. Look at this, it's endless rows of it. You will get them over time. If you trade in your trash gold artifacts that you were never gonna level and never gonna use, you're trading resin for other gold artifacts that cost resin. And you get more rolls and opportunities to get a good artifact. And I think that it's really worth it. Some people don't like it, I really do. I think that my other account is better because of the Strongbox, and getting good artifacts like this from the Strongbox, that's just the way I view it. So you've got your damage. Your attack is up, your crit rate, your crit damage, you've got your elemental goblet, you're vibing. But none of that matters if you've got a terrible team comp. So let's talk about some different support units, let's talk about elemental resonance, and building a strong reaction team for you. Now, elemental reactions are super important in the game. If you use a fire unit on an ice unit, you can melt them and get a 2 times damage multiplier on them, allowing someone like Xiangling here, when she ends up hitting, to do tons of damage, double the damage that she could have done, right? He's got that little cryo symbol above there. I have it too. If I hit him with this, I will melt and do a ton of extra damage. That melt reaction can be applied to other units that might not be elemental. If I am looking at this guy here, he's a Geo unit. If I hit this bad boy with a cryo unit, I can apply that cryo and I can melt, giving me 2 times the amount of damage. And so optimally, you want to try to get a team that can do a ton of these reactions if possible. I can place this down here, get a little bit more energy, right? I can apply a bunch of pyro, and then I can vaporize it off. And I can use those vaporize over and over and over and over again. I can use those melts over and over and over again. And that essentially 2 times is your damage. So whatever these stats are, your attack, your crit rate, your crit damage, if you then throw elemental reactions on top of that, you're going to slap and do even more damage. And so you need to work this into your team comps. And you're gonna need to support your DPS units if you wanna maximize your damage. Now, another stat you need to consider is elemental mastery that you can get from weapons, character ascensions, and just your artifacts. And this is going to impact those reactions. Vaporize and melt, I do 2 times the amount of damage, but I'm also getting 4.1% more. Now, this is at 21 elemental mastery. If we look at my Xiangling over here, she's getting 41% because she has over 243 elemental mastery. She's getting a 41% damage multiplier. So elemental mastery can be insanely good. In the case of Kazuha here, who has a ton of it, he would get 111%. And so this is another big multiplier that is going to fit in with your crit rate, with your crit damage and your attack. But you need to make sure that you can actually do the reactions, or else this stat is useless. If I run in with Xiangling and they're not or if they're not hit with hydro, if not hit with cryo, that will do no extra damage because there's no reaction happening. And a lot of people might not understand that. Now, another thing you need to consider with your team composition is elemental particles. When you use your elemental skill, you'll create an elemental particle. I'm gonna do that right now on this enemy. I'm gonna hit this bad boy, and you can see these floating things. Those are elemental particles. And as you can see, it gave me some of my burst. I'll do it one more time. I'll hit them, and it'll give me particles that open up my burst for use, right? You can see that down there. Now I can use my burst ability. The thing is elemental particles can be accepted by anyone. If I was to use these elemental particles and receive them from Bennett, because he's getting pyro particles, he gets more energy per particle. If I was to use my ability and catch them on Xingqiu, he would get some energy, but not quite as much. Which means if you have multiple pyro units, you can even funnel some of that energy in and have massive energy gains for your units. And it's something to consider when using your team comps so that you can rotate through and get those abilities. Now, your energy recharge is also going to affect how much energy you get from those particles, but it is something that can kind of tip the scale in your favor, is rotating through your characters and catching those particles on the units that you want to have their ability back. In the case of me, I want Xiangling's ability back as soon as possible, so I would rather use Bennett first, catch those on her, and then I've got my burst again. So super, super important to think about. Now, even if you're catching elemental particles on one character, the other characters will benefit. If I use this ability and catch them on Bennett, Xingqiu will get energy. So you're able to build your burst off field, but it's just more effective to catch the particles. And if you don't have, 2 pyro units, that's okay. In the case of Xingqiu, a hydro unit, I want to just make sure he catches all those hydro particles so that he can get that bang for your buck. You don't want to swap off your characters too soon or else you lose a ton of energy. On my Raiden Shogun, I would want to make sure that I'm catching any electro particles, on her so she can get her burst ability back, right? If you might notice, if I'm attacking here, sometimes it creates little like white or clear particles. Those give energy to everyone. That is just a basic elemental particle. It works for everyone, so make sure you focus on that. Now, I could go on and on about good team comps, but a quick rule of thumb is if you throw Xiangling in with anyone who's hydro or cryo, typically you'll get a pretty cool result. If you throw this guy, Xingqiu, in with anyone that's fire, you're gonna get a good result. Typically, there are so many guides that have been made on this game and character reviews and YouTubers that are better than me explaining the best optimal builds. If you see a character, watch a video on their best team comps, and I promise you it'll be close enough to perfect. There's only so many combinations in the game. But I do want to talk about support units because supports make everyone better. And I'm going to give you a great example of that. Someone like Kazuha is a universally good support, and someone like this can bring up your damage in amazing ways. With his artifact set, he's able to swirl and shred the resistances of enemies based on the elements. So if you place this unit with a pyro unit, you can swirl it and reduce the pyro resistances, boosting up your fire damage even more. On top of that, a unit like this, he gives elemental damage bonus to other characters. Super, super valuable to have. It's like having an extra elemental goblet on your character. And so there's characters like this that will boost up your main DPS and provide a lot of value. This guy, Bennett, notoriously one of the best supports in the game. He heals you, but he also gives you 119% of his attack bonus ratio. He might give you 500, 600, 700 more attack just by having him on your team and using his burst ability. There are certain supports in this game that can double or even triple your damage when used properly. And then there's other units that are considered sub-DPS units like Xingqiu that hit really hard on their own, but they also allow a ton of elemental reactions. He applies Hydro so quickly that units like Diluc can continually vaporize, and they work together as a team to do a ton of damage. And so my recommendation is look up the best supports and sub DPSs for your DPS unit, and you're gonna be able to make a pretty damn good team. And on top of this, when building a team, you need to consider the elemental resonance. By placing 2 pyro units on a team, everyone gets a 25% increased attack bonus, which is super, super good. If you look at 2 cryo units, you can increase the crit rate against frozen or cryo enemies by 15%, which opens a lot of door, and this is just a huge boost of damage. So if you can pull it off with your team comps, this goes a long way. You're going to want to support your teammates really effectively. A good team comp right here that I really like to use. Something like this, boosting elemental damage of Ayato, boosting the attack of Ayato, placing a bunch of pyro down so that Ayato can vaporize it off. Something like this has synergy. And most of the comps that you'll find on YouTube for the characters you're looking up will have this. They'll take into effect something like this. They'll take into effect the artifacts of Kazuha and shredding the defenses. They'll take in the vaporizing and the other interactions. And that's why there are so much varied teams. There's so many different opportunities to make your character shine. Now, to recap this video and end it very quickly, I want to give you a great couple of team comps. Now, this has a 5-star unit, Raiden Shogun, but this is one of, if not the best team in the game. And 4 of these units are, well, technically all of them are support units, but this team, one of the fastest Abyss clears in the game. We're going to switch it out with Kazuha here. These same 3 units plus Kazuha, and even better, all 4-star units. This is the OG, one of the best teams in the game. It works at Constellation 0, it works at Constellation 6 and hits even harder. But if you were to take these 4 units and you were gonna follow this guide, getting talents, ascensions, leveling up weapons, you would be able to beat every piece of content in the game, no problem. You'd be able to deal with the majority of shields in the game. You have buffs, you have damage, you have debuffs, you have everything you would need right here with these 4 characters to beat the game. And maybe you don't have Bennett, but you have a really cool healer. Something like this would still help you beat the game. And maybe you do have your Bennett, but you don't have Xingqiu. Maybe you can throw in a Mona that you got really lucky. Or maybe you could throw in some Electro and do some other cool things. But typically, if you have any assortment of these characters, you can beat pretty much everything in the game. You just have to invest in them well. And so don't get stressed out thinking you need a full team of 5-star units. Don't think you need every 5-star weapon. Even with a lot of 4-star characters and weapons, if you build them right, you can win. And that's pretty much it. You're gonna do 10 times more damage. Trust me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.